The ferry lurches as it crosses the Bosphorus, a shudder that runs through the steel deck and up into the soles of your feet. You are suspended between two continents. To your right lies Asia, a sprawling expanse of quiet neighborhoods and forested hills. To your left, Europe and the skyline that has haunted the dreams of emperors for 2,000 years. The air is thick with the scent of salt and diesel, a modern perfume layered over something much, much older. The call to prayer begins not as a single voice, but as a chorus, a conversation between minarets. It rises from the domes of the Blue Mosque, echoes from the slender spires of Suleymaniye, and seems to emanate from the very stones of the Hagia Sophia. The sound washes over the city, a timeless wave in an ocean of noise. Seagulls, audacious and loud, cry overhead, their wings catching the golden light of the late afternoon. You watch a colossal container ship, a floating skyscraper from Panama, lumber its way towards the Black Sea, a slow-motion giant navigating a channel carved by myth and legend. This is Istanbul, a city that does not sit quietly in the past. It is a place where history is a living, breathing, shouting thing. But let us peel back the noise. Let us quiet the drone of the ferry's engine and the chatter of the tourists beside you taking pictures of the shoreline. Let us erase, for a moment, the steel and glass towers that rise behind the ancient peninsula. Let us travel back not centuries, but just a few feet to the water itself. Feel the cold spray on your face. This water, this narrow strait, is the reason for everything. It is the ultimate strategic prize, the choke point between worlds, the artery connecting the vast inland sea of the Eurasian steppe to the warm, contested waters of the Mediterranean. Whoever holds this channel holds the key to empires. The Greeks knew it when they founded a small colony here and called it Byzantium. The Romans knew it when Emperor Constantine the Great, seeking a new capital for a crumbling empire, had a vision on these shores and declared this place Nova Roma, New Rome. And for the next 1,000 years, as Constantinople, it would be the largest, wealthiest, and most impregnable city in the Christendom, the capital of a Roman Empire that refused to die. And then others knew it too. They came from the east, a new people, a new faith, a new and terrifying power, the Ottoman Turks. For them, this city was not just a strategic prize, it was a prophecy, a promise. The red apple, the golden fruit at the center of the world, and in the spring of 1453 they came for it. Imagine you are not on a comfortable ferry, but on a small, desperate Genoese galley rowing for your life against this very current. The year is 1453. The water around you is choked with debris, splintered oars, the floating bodies of men. The air, thick not with diesel, but with the sulphurous, choking smoke of gunpowder. The sound is not the call to prayer, but a continuous, earth-shaking thunder. It is the sound of the largest cannon the world has ever seen, a bronze behemoth named the Basilica hurling stone balls the weight of a small horse against the ancient land walls of the city. For over 50 days, the city has been besieged. Sultan Mehmed II, a young man of only 21, with eyes that burn with an old man's ambition, has assembled a force of nearly 100,000 warriors against a garrison of barely 7,000 defenders. The 1,000-year-old walls, the legendary Theodosian walls that have never been breached, are crumbling. Inside the city, the last Roman emperor, Constantine XI Palaiologos, walks those same walls, his face grim, his purple imperial boots covered in dust and blood. He knows the end is near. The prophecies are all coming true. The city was founded by a Constantine, son of a Helena. It will fall, they say, under a Constantine, son of a Helena. The circle is closing. The water beneath your galley feels not like a passage, but like a grave. This is the same water, the same view, the same light, but it is a different world. A world of fire and steel and desperation. Open your eyes, the ferry docks at Eminurnu. The gangplank lowers with a clang. You step onto the European shore, back into the 21st century. The chaos is immediate, a symphony of the modern city. Men yell, selling corn on the cob from steaming carts. The smell of grilled fish from the famous rocking boats by the Galata Bridge fills the air. A tram shrieks as it arrives, disgorging a river of people. You have arrived, but you have not just arrived in a city. You have arrived in a place of ghosts, a city built on the rubble of other cities, a palimpsest where the ink of one empire has bled through the parchment of another. To understand Istanbul, you must walk its streets not just with your eyes open to the present, but with your mind open to the past. You must learn to see the ghosts, and they are everywhere, so let us begin our journey. Let us walk into this magnificent, wounded, triumphant city and listen to the stories the stones have to tell. Before we lose ourselves in the labyrinth of the old city, we must find our bearings. We check into a small hotel in the Circuses district, not far from the water, in a building that was once an Ottoman-era trading house. The room is simple, but the window looks out over a tangle of rooftops, satellite dishes, and the occasional cypress tree rising like a dark green flame. I drop my bags, the sound echoing on the wooden floor. The journey was long, but the city outside pulls at me with an irresistible force. There is no time for rest. The first walk in a new city is a sacred ritual, a kind of baptism. It is the moment the map in your head begins to correspond to the reality under your feet. I step out into the narrow street. The buildings lean in towards each other, their upper floors almost touching, creating a canyon of shadow and light. The air smells of strong coffee, roasting chestnuts, and the faint, sweet scent of narghile smoke from a nearby cafe. Old men sit on low stools, nursing tulip-shaped glasses of black tea, their faces maps of stories I will never know. Their eyes follow me not with suspicion, but with a quiet, patient curiosity. I am another traveler, another ripple in the city's endless river of souls. I walk without a destination, letting the city guide me. I turn a corner and find myself facing a remnant of an ancient wall, colossal stones fitted together without mortar, a piece of the old Byzantine sea defenses. A laundry line is strung between it and a modern apartment building. A bright blue shirt flutters against a stone laid down by masons 1600 years ago. This is the temporal overlap, the casual, unthinking fusion of then and now that defines this place. History is not in a museum here. It is the wall of someone's backyard. It is the foundation of a kebab shop. It is the very ground you walk upon. I run my hand over the stone. It is rough, weathered by 1,000 winters, 1,000 salt-laced winds. It feels cool, solid, permanent. What did this stone see? Did it watch the Viking mercenaries of the Varangian Guard disembark, their axes gleaming in the sun? Did it feel the tremor when the first Ottoman cannons began their bombardment? It is silent, of course, but the silence is heavy with memory. My wanderings eventually lead me towards the heart of the old imperial city, the area now known as Sultanate. The streets widen slightly, the buildings become grander. I can feel I am approaching the center of power. And then I see it, not the whole thing at first, but a glimpse. Through a gap between two buildings, I see a dome. A vast, world-altering dome floating against the evening sky. The Hagia Sophia, even from a distance, it takes your breath away. It is not just a building, it is a statement, a challenge to the heavens. I know I will spend hours, days, exploring its depths, but for now, this first glimpse is enough. It is the anchor point of the entire city. I find a small, simple restaurant, a locanta, where workers are eating their evening meal. The owner, a man with a magnificent white mustache, greets me with a simple nod and points to the simmering pots behind a glass counter. I point to a lamb stew with eggplant and a dish of white beans in tomato sauce. I sit at a small table. The food arrives with a basket of fresh, crusty bread. I take the first bite. The lamb is tender, rich with spices that speak of ancient trade routes, cumin, coriander, a hint of cinnamon. It is a taste of this land, a taste of history itself. The bread is perfect for soaking up the sauce. I eat slowly, watching the life of the city pass by the window. A young couple walks hand in hand. A delivery boy on a scooter weaves through the thinning traffic. The call to prayer sounds again, this time closer, more intimate. And in this simple meal, in this quiet moment, I feel a sense of connection. I am here. I am present in this city of ghosts, and for tonight I am one of them, a silent observer in the river of time. The journey has truly begun. The next morning I wake early. The sun is just beginning to cast its pale gold light over the city. I want to understand the logic of this place, the reason it became the center of the world. And to do that, you must go to where it all began, not with a building, but with a space, the Hippodrome. Today it is a long, placid public park, a garden oblong stretching between the Blue Mosque and the Museum of Turkish and Islamic Arts. Families stroll here, children chase pigeons, tourists sit on benches eating ice cream. It feels peaceful, almost mundane. The air smells of cut grass and blooming roses. The sound is of laughter and the distant hum of traffic. You can buy a roasted chestnut from a vendor, its sweet, smoky aroma clinging to your fingers. It is a pleasant place to spend an afternoon. But you must use your imagination. You must scrape away the present, stand in the middle of this green space and close your eyes, erase the benches and the flower beds. In their place, see a vast U-shaped stadium, a colossal structure of marble and stone capable of holding 100,000 people. Hear the roar. Not of traffic, but of a crowd driven to a frenzy. This was the heart of Constantinople's public life. It was more than a racetrack. It was a political theater, a place of celebration, and a crucible of rebellion. The emperor would sit in his imperial box, the kathisma, connected directly to his palace, a remote and godlike figure observing his people. Below on the sandy track, the chariot teams, the blues and the greens, would race, their flimsy chariots pulled by four frantic horses careening around the sharp turns. These were not just sports teams. They were political factions, with loyalties that ran deeper than blood. To support the blues or the greens was to make a statement about your place in the world, your politics, your faith. Now let your mind drift to the year 532. The emperor is Justinian I. He is ambitious, ruthless, a man who dreams of restoring the full glory of the old Roman Empire, but he is also unpopular. His taxes are high, his laws severe. The people are restless. Here in this very space, during a chariot race, the simmering anger explodes. A chant begins, rising from the stands, a single word repeated over and over. Nika, 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 victory, but it is not a cheer for the charioteers, it is a cry for rebellion. The blues and the greens, for once united, turn on the emperor. The Nika riots have begun. For 5 days the city burns. Mobs surge through the streets, looting and killing. Half the city is destroyed, including the great church that stood where the Hagia Sophia now stands. Justinian, terrified, is ready to flee. He packs his treasure onto a ship in the Golden Horn. The empire hangs by a thread. But his wife, the Empress Theodora, a former actress of humble birth with a spine of steel, refuses. She stands before him and his trembling generals and delivers one of the most famous speeches in history. Royalty, she says, is a fine burial shroud. Shamed into action, Justinian stays. He unleashes his loyal general, Belisarius, and his troops. They trap the rioters here in the Hippodrome. The gates are locked, and the massacre begins. When it is over, more than 30,000 people lie dead on the blood-soaked sand of the arena. Justinian's throne is secure, the rebellion is crushed. And from the ashes of the burned city, he will build his masterpiece, the Hagia Sophia, a monument to God's glory and his own terrifying power. Open your eyes, you are standing on the grass. A child runs past you, giggling. A cat sleeps in a patch of sunlight. The only remnants of that colossal stadium are 3 monuments that once stood on the central spine, the spina. At the far end, the obelisk of Thutmose III, a piece of ancient Egypt carved 1,500 years before Christ, stolen from Karnak by one Roman emperor and brought here by another. Look at its base. The marble carvings show the Emperor Theodosius in the imperial box, receiving tribute, presiding over the games. He is depicted as a serene, all-powerful figure, but the carving also shows the engineering feat of erecting this massive granite needle. It shows the sweat and toil of anonymous men, the brute force required to raise a symbol of power. It tells 2 stories, the official story of effortless glory and the hidden story of human labor. Nearby stands the serpent column, a strange, twisted bronze pillar. It is one of the oldest Greek artifacts in the world, cast from the melted-down shields of the defeated Persians after the Battle of Plataea in 479 BC. It originally stood at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi, a tribute to Greek unity. It was brought here by Constantine the Great to lend his new city the prestige of ancient Greece. The 3 serpent heads at its top are long gone, broken off over the centuries. One is in the city's archaeology museum, but the column remains, a silent, coiling witness. It saw the glory of classical Greece, the founding of this city, the reign of Justinian, the coming of the Ottomans, and the birth of modern Turkey. It has outlasted every empire that possessed it. What does this space, the Hippodrome, tell us? It tells us that power needs a stage, that the masses must be entertained and controlled, that bread and circuses are the oldest tools of empire. It shows us how a place of public spectacle can become a place of public slaughter in an instant. And it reminds us that the peaceful, green parks of our own time often sit atop foundations of blood and fire. The past is never truly gone. It is just sleeping beneath the grass, waiting for us to listen. From the political heart of the Byzantine city, we move to its commercial soul, the Grand Bazaar. The entrance is unassuming, a stone archway in a busy street, but to step through it is to cross a threshold into another world. The light changes instantly, from the bright glare of the sun to a dim, filtered glow. The air grows thick with 1,000 smells. The sharp, sweet scent of apple tea, the rich aroma of leather goods, the musty fragrance of old carpets, and the metallic tang of copper being hammered in a distant workshop. The sound is a constant, humming roar, a tapestry woven from the threads of a dozen languages, the clatter of teacups, the insistent patter of merchants, and the shuffling feet of 10,000 shoppers. It is not a market. It is a city within a city, a covered labyrinth of 61 streets and over 4,000 shops, a place where you can and will get hopelessly lost. I let myself be carried by the human current, drifting down the main artery of the bazaar. The shops are piled high with treasures, a riot of color and texture, piles of silk scarves in every conceivable shade, towers of hand-painted ceramic bowls, their intricate patterns dazzling the eye, and the lanterns. Hundreds of them, mosaic glass lamps of all shapes and sizes, hanging from the ceilings of the shops, casting a warm, jeweled light into the passageways. It feels like walking through Aladdin's cave. A merchant, seeing my gaze linger on a particularly beautiful blue lamp, calls out, "Hello, my friend, where are you from?" Come, just look, no pressure, have some tea. This is the ritual of the bazaar, a dance of commerce and hospitality that has been practiced here for centuries. To refuse the tea would be an insult. I step into his small shop, which is lined from floor to ceiling with carpets. He shouts an order to a boy who scurries off and returns moments later with two small glasses of steaming apple tea on a silver tray. We sit on low stools, surrounded by the woven dreams of Anatolia. He tells me about the carpets, the meaning of the symbols, the villages where they were made. He is not just selling an object, he is selling a story. Now let us rewind time again. The Grand Bazaar was one of the first projects started by Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror after he took the city in 1453. He understood that to make his new capital, Istanbul, a great city, he needed to make it a rich city. He built this market to be the central hub of Ottoman commerce, the final stop on the Silk Road from China, the place where spices from the east would be traded for wool from the west. Imagine this place in the 16th century under the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. The corridors would have been filled with merchants from Venice and Genoa, their fine silks brushing against the rough wool of traders from Persia and the Levant. The air would have been thick with the smell of cloves and pepper, commodities more valuable than gold. You would have heard the jingle of coins from every corner of the known world: Spanish silver, Venetian ducats, Ottoman acts. This was not just a market. It was the engine of an empire, a place where fortunes were made and lost, where spies exchanged secrets over cups of coffee, and where the wealth of three continents flowed through these very halls. The structure itself, with its vaulted ceilings and thick stone walls, was designed to be fireproof, a secure vault for the empire's commercial lifeblood. I finish my tea, thank the carpet seller, and step back into the main corridor. The crowd has thickened. I see a family from Saudi Arabia, a group of German students, a Japanese tour group following a guide with a small flag. The world still comes here. The goods may have changed, there are more t-shirts and tourist trinkets now, but the fundamental energy of the place is the same. It is a crossroads, a place of human connection forged through the act of trade. What does the bazaar teach us about Istanbul? It shows us that the city's identity has always been commercial. It has always been a meeting point, a place of exchange, not just of goods, but of ideas, cultures, and languages. The military might of emperors and sultans may have built the walls and the palaces, but it was the haggling of merchants in these crowded alleys that gave the city its true, enduring power. To walk through the Grand Bazaar is to walk through a living monument to globalization, a 500-year-old testament to the human desire to connect, to trade, and to tell each other stories, preferably over a small glass of tea. Getting lost here is not a mistake. It is the entire point. But there was a dark side to this great nexus of trade, a side built not on the exchange of silks and spices, but of human lives. Before we proceed to the glories of the Ottoman court, we must confront a difficult truth. In the centuries following the conquest, Istanbul became one of the largest slave markets in the world. The wealth that built the magnificent mosques and palaces was partly derived from the sale of men, women, and children captured in raids from across the Black Sea, the Balkans, and Africa. They were sold in markets not far from here, their fates decided by the highest bidder. Many of the beautiful women who populated the Sultan's harem began their lives as captives. Many of the powerful janissaries, the elite soldiers of the empire, were taken as boys from Christian villages in the Balkans, converted to Islam, and trained to be the loyal, fanatical servants of the Sultan. This system, known as the devshirme, was a brutal but effective tool of empire building. It created a ruling class utterly dependent on the Sultan, with no family ties or regional loyalties to challenge his authority. This is a part of the city's history that is not memorialized in grand monuments, but its legacy is woven into the very fabric of the empire. As we walk these beautiful, historic streets, We must remember that the story of Istanbul, like the story of any great empire, is a complex tapestry of light and shadow, of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable cruelty. Before the Ottoman conquest, however, the Byzantine Empire suffered a wound from which it would never truly recover. It was a wound inflicted not by a foreign enemy or a different faith, but by its own Christian brethren. We must speak of the year 1204, the Fourth Crusade. The armies of Western Europe, ostensibly on their way to liberate Jerusalem from the Saracens, were diverted by the scheming ambition of the Venetians. Their target became not the Holy Land, but the richest Christian city in the world, Constantinople. Let us find a place to contemplate this tragedy. We walk down to the shores of the Golden Horn, the natural harbor that has protected the city for millennia. We stand near the water's edge in the Fenner district, a neighborhood that was once the heart of the city's Greek Orthodox community. The buildings here are different. Tall, narrow houses painted in pastel colors with enclosed wooden balconies, a relic of the Ottoman era. This was a wealthy neighborhood home to the Phanariots, the Greek families who grew rich and powerful as administrators and diplomats for the Ottoman sultans. It is quieter here away from the tourist throngs of Sultanate. The water of the Golden Horn is calm, lapping gently against the stone embankments. A few small fishing boats are moored nearby. Now imagine this same view in April of 1204. The water is not calm. It is swarming with the warships of the Venetian fleet, their sails emblazoned with the Lion of St. Mark. On the far shore, the Crusader army has breached the sea walls. The city, which had trusted in its Christian identity for protection, is being systematically sacked. For 3 days, the soldiers of the cross run riot. They murder, they loot, they defile. They storm into the Hagia Sophia, the holiest sanctuary in Orthodox Christendom. They tear down the silver iconostases, drink wine from the sacred chalices, and place a prostitute on the patriarch's throne. They strip the city of its priceless relics, the bones of saints, fragments of the true cross, the shroud of Christ. These treasures are shipped back to the cathedrals of Venice, Paris, and Rome, a holy plunder that would enrich the West for centuries. They melt down ancient bronze statues from the Hippodrome, masterpieces of classical art, to mint coins. The Great Library of Constantinople, which held the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world, is put to the torch. It is an orgy of destruction, a cultural catastrophe on an unimaginable scale. The Byzantine Empire is shattered. A Latin king is placed on the throne of Constantinople. The empire breaks apart into smaller successor states fighting amongst themselves. Though a Byzantine emperor would eventually retake the city in 1261, it was a hollow victory. The city was a shadow of its former self, impoverished, depopulated, a ghost town haunted by the memory of its former glory. The sack of 1204 was a mortal wound. It broke the spirit of the Byzantine world and left it fatally weakened, a pale and trembling prize waiting for the final blow that would come from the Ottomans 250 years later. It also created a schism between Eastern and Western Christianity, a wound of betrayal that has never fully healed. Standing here today on the peaceful shores of the Golden Horn, it is hard to imagine such violence. A ferry glides past, its wake gently rocking the fishing boats. The call to prayer echoes from a nearby mosque, but the ghosts of 1204 are here. They are in the empty niches of the churches where stolen icons once rested. They are in the collections of the museums in Venice, where the 4 bronze horses that once stood in the Hippodrome now adorn the facade of St. Mark's Basilica. The event is a dark reminder that the greatest threats often come not from the outside, but from within. It teaches us that greed can wear the mask of piety and that the name of God can be invoked to justify the most profane of acts. The tranquil water of the Golden Horn holds deep and terrible secrets. It has witnessed acts of faith and acts of betrayal, and it keeps them all, reflecting the changing sky, indifferent to the follies of men. The weakened Byzantine state was now surrounded. From the east, a new power was rising, disciplined, ambitious, and fueled by the fire of a warrior faith, the Ottoman Turks. To understand the final chapter of Constantinople, we must leave the city for a short while. We take a ferry up the Bosphorus, the majestic waterway that is the city's lifeblood. The journey itself is a lesson in history and geography. We pass under the massive modern bridges that stitch the 2 continents together. We glide past opulent Ottoman-era wooden mansions, the yalis built right on the water's edge. We see ancient fortresses and modern skyscrapers sharing the same shoreline. The Bosphorus is not just a strait, it is a corridor of power, and every inch of it has been fought for. Our destination is a fortress on the European shore, about halfway up the strait. It is called Rumeli Hissari, the fortress of Europe. From the water, it is a stunning sight. A series of massive stone towers and crenellated walls that climb the steep hillside, a perfect example of medieval military architecture. It was built by Sultan Mehmed II in the year 1452, just 1 year before his final siege of Constantinople. The Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI watched its construction from his palace with a growing sense of dread. He knew exactly what it meant. We disembark and climb the hill to the fortress entrance. The scale of the place is immense. The walls are up to 30 feet thick. The three main towers are named after the three viziers Mehmed put in charge of their construction, forcing them to compete to see who could finish first. The entire fortress, a monumental undertaking that would normally take years, was completed in just 4 months. 4 months. Imagine the sheer logistical effort, the thousands of masons and laborers working day and night, the relentless will of the young sultan driving them on. This was not just a fortress, it was a declaration of intent. It was a stranglehold. By building this fortress directly across the water from an older one on the Asian side, Anadolu Hissari, Mehmed now controlled the Bosphorus completely. He could cut off Constantinople from any potential aid from the Black Sea, from the Genoese colonies that were the city's lifeline. He was tightening the noose. We walk along the ramparts. The view is breathtaking. The Bosphorus flows below us, a ribbon of deep blue churned by currents and crisscrossed by ships. You can see the narrowest point of the strait right here. It is easy to imagine the massive cannons that were once mounted on these towers, their bronze muzzles aimed at the water. Any ship that tried to pass without paying tribute to the Sultan would be sent to the bottom. This fortress was a tool of economic warfare, a choke point designed to starve the city into submission before the final military assault even began. Standing here in the quiet of a sunny afternoon, with only the wind and the cry of seagulls for company, you can feel the inexorable logic of history. You can feel the tide turning. The thousand-year-old Christian Roman Empire, now reduced to a single, beleaguered city, was facing a young, dynamic, and brilliantly led Islamic empire at the peak of its power. The construction of Rumeli Hissari was the beginning of the end. It was the moment the question of Constantinople's fate changed from if to when. It tells us that great historical events are rarely sudden. They are the culmination of years, sometimes centuries, of preparation, of shifting power dynamics, of technological innovation, and of the sheer, focused ambition of individuals like Mehmed II. This fortress is a monument to that ambition, a stone testament to the idea that if you want to conquer an island, you must first control the sea around it. And for Mehmed, Constantinople was an island of Christianity in a rising sea of Islam, and he was determined to claim it for his own. We return to the city as the sun begins to set. The sky over the historic peninsula is painted in shades of orange and purple. The silhouettes of the great mosques are stark against the dying light. Tonight we will walk the path of the defenders. We will go to the Theodosian walls. These are the land walls, the great triple line of fortifications that protected the city's western flank for a millennium. They stretch for nearly 4 miles from the Sea of Marmara to the Golden Horn. For 1,000 years, they were the most formidable defensive system in the world. They repelled attacks from Avars, Arabs, Bulgars, and Russians. They were the shield of Christendom. We find a section of the walls near the Edirne Gate. Much of it is still standing, a magnificent, crumbling ruin. We climb a set of stone steps to the top of the outer wall. The city sprawls before us on one side, a sea of modern apartment buildings. On the other side, outside the walls, are fields and highways. The noise of evening traffic is a constant roar, but again, we must listen past the noise. We must look past the modern intrusions. The air grows cooler as darkness falls. The stone beneath our hands is cold. It is the night of May 28, 1453, the final night. The siege has lasted for 53 days. The great cannons of Sultan Mehmed have relentlessly pounded these walls, turning sections of them to rubble. The defenders, a mixed force of Greeks, Genoese, and Venetians, are exhausted, outnumbered 10 to 1. But they have fought with superhuman courage, repairing the walls at night, repelling every assault. The Emperor Constantine XI knows the final attack is coming at dawn. There will be no more negotiations, no more truces. This is the final battle for the city, for the empire, for 1,000 years of history. He gathers his commanders for one last time in the Hagia Sophia. The great church is filled with the desperate prayers of the people. Orthodox priests and Catholic cardinals who had been squabbling for months over theological differences now share the same Eucharist, united in the face of annihilation. Constantine delivers a final, heartbreaking speech. He does not speak of glory or victory. He speaks of duty, of faith, of the honor of dying for God, for country, and for family. He asks them to remember that they are the descendants of the ancient Greeks and Romans. He asks them to fight to the last man. Then he walks through the church, asking for forgiveness from every person he meets, from the highest noble to the lowest servant. After the service, he rides his horse out to these very walls. He rides along the entire length of the fortifications, inspecting the defenses, encouraging the soldiers. Imagine him here on this spot, a lone figure in the torchlight, his face etched with exhaustion and resolve. He is no longer an emperor in a gilded palace. He is a soldier sharing the same fate as his men. He knows there is no escape. He knows that tomorrow he will either be a conqueror or a corpse. The weight of 1,000 years of Roman history rests on his shoulders. He looks out over the dark fields and sees the campfires of the Ottoman army, a seemingly infinite sea of lights stretching to the horizon. He can hear the sounds from their camp, the prayers, the sharpening of steel, the low murmur of 100,000 men preparing for battle. It is the sound of his city's death warrant. The calm before the storm. Standing here on these ancient stones as the modern city glitters below, you can almost feel his presence. You can feel the chill of that final, desperate night, the quiet courage of a man facing the end of his world. At dawn on May 29, 1453, the final assault begins. It starts with a sound that is not human. A deafening roar from the Ottoman camp, the beating of drums, the clash of cymbals, the blast of trumpets, and the war cry of 100,000 throats screaming, Allah, Allah. The earth itself seems to tremble. The first waves of attackers are the Bashi-Bazoks, irregular troops, poorly armed and disciplined, sent forward as cannon fodder to exhaust the defenders. They charge the makeshift repairs in the walls, climbing over rubble and debris, and are met with a hail of arrows, stones, and Greek fire. For 2 hours they are slaughtered, but they wear down the defenders, using up their precious arrows and energy. Then comes the second wave. The Anatolian regiments, regular troops, disciplined and well-armed. They attack a different section of the walls, forcing the beleaguered defenders to rush from one breach to another. The fighting is hand-to-hand, brutal and intimate. Swords, axes, spears, men screaming, dying in the narrow gaps of the walls. The great cannon, the basilica, continues its terrible work, each shot shaking the foundations of the city, each stone ball crashing into the walls with the force of an earthquake. The Genoese commander, Giovanni Giustiniani, a brilliant soldier of fortune who has been the heart of the defense, is grievously wounded. He is carried away from the front line, and his departure causes a panic among his men. The line begins to waver. And then Sultan Mehmed commits his final, ultimate weapon. The Janissaries, they are not just soldiers. They are a religious brotherhood raised from childhood to know nothing but war and absolute loyalty to the Sultan. They are the finest infantry in the world. They advance not with a wild charge, but in disciplined, silent ranks, their tall white hats making them seem like an army of ghosts. They do not attack the main breach. They aim for a smaller, less defended section of the wall. And then the moment that seals the city's fate, a small postern gate, the Kirkaporta, used for small raids on the enemy, had been left unlocked. Some historians say it was a mistake, an oversight in the chaos. Others whisper of betrayal. A small group of Janissaries finds the open gate. They slip inside, overwhelm the few guards, and climb to the top of the tower. And there, for all to see, they raise the blood-red banner of the Ottoman Sultan over the walls of Constantinople. A cry goes up from the defenders. The city is taken. Panic spreads like wildfire. The defense collapses. At the same time, the main body of Janissaries, led by a giant named Hassan, finally storms the main breach. Constantine XI sees the Ottoman flags on his walls. He knows the end has come. According to legend, he tears off his imperial regalia, the purple cloak and boots that mark him as emperor, and cries out, "Is there no Christian man here to take my head?" Then, with his last loyal companions, he plunges into the sea of oncoming Janissaries, his sword flashing. He disappears into the melee, fighting and dying not as an emperor but as a common Roman soldier. His body is never definitively found. The last Caesar dies anonymously, defending the last remnant of his empire. The Ottoman soldiers pour into the city. The 3 days of plunder that Mehmed had promised his troops begins. The streets run with blood. The people who had fled to the Hagia Sophia, believing its thick walls would protect them, are trapped. The soldiers break down the great bronze doors, the screaming begins. Men are killed, women and children are rounded up to be sold as slaves. The great church, the sanctuary of holy wisdom, becomes a scene of carnage and violation. Later that afternoon, Sultan Mehmed II, now known as Fatih Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror, makes his triumphal entry into the city. He rides his white horse through the shattered gates, through the smoke-filled, corpse-strewn streets. He rides directly to the Hagia Sophia. He dismounts, enters the great church, and stoops to pick up a handful of earth, which he sprinkles over his turban as a sign of humility before God. He orders the looting to stop. He looks up at the magnificent dome, at the golden mosaics of Christ and the saints looking down upon him. He declares that this, the greatest church in Christendom, will now be the greatest mosque of Islam. He climbs onto the pulpit and an imam proclaims the Shahada, "There is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet." The sound echoes through the vast space, sealing the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Roman Empire, a continuous political entity for over 2,000 years, is finally definitively over. Constantinople is no more. Now and forever after, it will be Istanbul. Today you can stand at that same breach in the wall where Constantine XI made his last stand. The modern city roars around you, cars honk, tour buses rumble past. But if you stand still, if you close your eyes and filter out the noise, you can feel the weight of that day. You can feel the ghosts. You can almost hear the clash of steel, the screams of the dying, the final, desperate prayers. It is a place of profound sadness, but also of profound courage. This ground is saturated with the memory of the end of a world, and it reminds us that all empires, no matter how great, no matter how eternal they seem, eventually fall. The walls break. The gates are breached, and the spider, as Mehmed is said to have quoted from a Persian poem while touring the ruined imperial palace, weaves its web in the palace of the Caesars. Time, in the end, conquers all. After the conquest, the city needed to be reborn. Mehmed the Conqueror did not want to rule over a smoking ruin. He wanted a vibrant, living capital, the heart of a new world empire. He launched a massive campaign of rebuilding and repopulation, bringing in people from all over his conquered territories, Turks, Greeks, Armenians, Jews, to create a new, cosmopolitan metropolis. And at the center of this new city, he transformed its most sacred space, the Hagia Sophia. We must go there now. We approach it from the Sultanate Park, the old Hippodrome. It dominates the view, a colossal mountain of brick and stone, its massive central dome seeming to float above four slender minarets that were added by the Ottomans. It is a building that defies architectural logic, a structure of immense power and surprising grace. Its color is a soft, rosy pink, the color of a faded sunset. It does not look like it was built by human hands. It looks like it was willed into existence. We enter, and the world outside falls away. You step into a space that is so vast, so overwhelming that it silences you. Your eyes are drawn upwards irresistibly to the dome. It is 180 feet high, 107 feet in diameter. It does not sit heavily on the building. Thanks to a ring of 40 windows at its base, it seems to be suspended from heaven by a golden chain, just as the original Byzantine chroniclers described it. Light floods the interior, a diffuse, golden, holy light that seems to make the very air glow. The space beneath it is uninterrupted, a vision of the celestial canopy brought down to earth. This was the vision of Emperor Justinian in the 6th century, after the Nika riots. He wanted to build a church that would surpass every temple ever built, including the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. When he first entered the completed building in the year 537, he is said to have wept and cried out, "Solomon, I have vanquished thee." For nearly 1,000 years, this was the heart of the Orthodox Christian world. Imagine the space then. The walls covered in glittering gold mosaics depicting Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints, the air thick with the scent of beeswax candles and incense. The sound of Byzantine chants echoing in the cavernous space, the liturgy performed by the patriarch himself with the emperor in attendance. This was the center of an empire, a place where heaven and earth were believed to meet. Then in 1453, Mehmed the Conqueror stood in this same spot. He saw the same dome, the same light, but he saw it through different eyes. He saw it as the ultimate symbol of his victory, the crowning jewel of his new capital. He ordered the building preserved, but its function changed. The Christian mosaics were not destroyed but covered over with plaster. The bells were taken down, the altars were removed. A mihrab was installed, pointing the way to Mecca. A minbar, a pulpit for the Friday sermon, was erected, and the great Christian basilica became the great imperial mosque of the Ottoman sultans. For nearly 500 years, the Islamic call to prayer echoed where Byzantine chants once soared. The names of Allah, the Prophet Muhammad, and the first four caliphs were inscribed on huge circular panels and hung from the pillars, sharing the space with the hidden Christian saints beneath the plaster. Then came the 20th century. The Ottoman Empire collapsed. A new, secular republic Turkey was born. Its founder, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, seeking to create a modern nation, looked at this building, this potent symbol of two faiths, two empires, and made a radical decision. In 1935, he declared the Hagia Sophia a museum. The plaster was carefully removed, revealing the magnificent Christian mosaics beneath. For the first time in centuries, the golden-robed figures of Christ and the Virgin Mary looked down upon the Islamic calligraphy. The building became a neutral ground, a monument to the city's layered history, a bridge between two worlds. A symbol of a secular Turkey looking towards the west. And now, in our time, the story has taken another turn. In the year 2020, the decision was made to convert it back into a functioning mosque. The carpets returned, the prayers resumed. The mosaics are now veiled during prayer times. The building is once again a living, breathing house of worship. To stand inside the Hagia Sophia is to stand at the epicenter of history's great tectonic shifts. It is a building that has been a cathedral, a mosque, a museum, and a mosque again. It has been at the center of riots, conquests, and revolutions. It is not a static monument. It is a living document, and its story is still being written. It asks us a profound question: what is the nature of sacred space? Can a place be holy to more than one faith? Whose story does it tell? The answer, perhaps, is that it tells the story of Istanbul itself. A story of transformation, of appropriation, of survival. A story of faith and power inextricably intertwined. The light that streams through the windows of the dome is the same light that Justinian saw, the same light that Maimed saw, the same light that Atatürk saw. It illuminates the layers, the compromises, the wounds, and the enduring, breathtaking beauty of it all. Just across the park from the Hagia Sophia stands its architectural rival, the Sultan Ahmed Mosque, known to the world as the Blue Mosque. It was built in the early 17th century by Sultan Ahmed I, a young ruler who wanted to create a monument that would surpass the Christian masterpiece of his Byzantine predecessors. From the outside, it is perhaps even more beautiful than the Hagia Sophia. A cascade of domes and semidomes flows down from the great central dome, creating a sense of harmony and perfect proportion. And uniquely, it has 6 minarets, their slender, pencil-like forms piercing the sky. Legend has it that the Sultan had specified gold minarets, altın, but the architect misheard him and built 6, alti. Whatever the reason, the 6 minarets caused a scandal at the time, as only the Holy Mosque in Mecca had 6. The Sultan had to solve the problem by paying for a 7th minaret to be added to the mosque in Mecca, restoring its preeminence. We remove our shoes and step inside. The interior is bathed in a cool blue light. The name of the mosque becomes immediately apparent. The upper levels and the domes are covered in more than 20,000 hand-painted ceramic tiles from the city of Iznik. They are decorated with intricate floral patterns, tulips, roses, carnations in dazzling shades of blue and turquoise. The effect is overwhelming, a celestial garden brought to life in ceramic. The space is vast, but it feels different from the Hagia Sophia. Where the Hagia Sophia soars upwards, creating a sense of vertical, divine mystery, the Blue Mosque feels more grounded, more human-scaled. It is a vast, open, light-filled space designed for communal prayer, its 4 massive pillars, known as elephant's feet, supporting the dome without obstructing the view. We sit on the soft red carpet at the back, behind the area reserved for prayer. A few men are praying, their movements synchronized and serene. The air is quiet, peaceful. This is a living place of worship, and we are its guests. The contrast between these two great buildings, standing face to face across the square, tells the story of the city's transformation. The Hagia Sophia is a Roman basilica repurposed. It is heavy, ancient, filled with the ghosts of a conquered world. Its beauty is one of spiritual weight and historical gravity. The Blue Mosque, on the other hand, is pure Ottoman classicism. It is elegant, light, confident. It is the art of an empire at its peak, an empire secure in its faith and its power, no longer needing to appropriate the symbols of the past but creating its own. To visit one without the other is to only hear half of the conversation, a dialogue in stone and light that has been going on across this square for 400 years. From the sacred heart of the empire, we move to its political brain and beating heart, the Topkapi Palace. This is not a palace in the European sense, not a single monolithic building like Versailles. It is a sprawling complex of courtyards, pavilions, gardens, and kiosks, a city within a city, nestled on the promontory overlooking the confluence of the Bosphorus and the Golden Horn. For 400 years, from the time of Mehmed the Conqueror until the mid-19th century, this was the home of the Ottoman sultans and the administrative center of their vast empire. We enter through the imperial gate, the Babletter 131 Humayun. The first courtyard is a vast, open space, more like a park. This was the only part of the palace accessible to the general public. Here the janissaries would gather. It feels surprisingly public, almost modest. But as we pass through the second gate, the gate of salutation, into the second courtyard, the world begins to change. This was the heart of the palace's administration. We see the divan, the imperial council chamber, where the Grand Vizier and the other ministers of state would meet to govern the affairs of an empire that stretched from Hungary to Yemen. The Sultan himself would often listen in on their deliberations, hidden behind a golden grille, a remote, unseen presence, his power all the more absolute for being invisible. We see the vast palace kitchens, which once fed up to 10,000 people a day. This was a machine of governance, a bureaucratic powerhouse. But the true mystery of Topkapi lies beyond, in the third courtyard and the secluded world of the harem. To enter the harem requires a separate ticket, and as we pass through its gates, the atmosphere changes again. The spaces become smaller, more intimate, more richly decorated. The word harem simply means forbidden or private. This was the private domain of the Sultan and his family, but it was also a fiercely competitive, hierarchical world of its own. It was ruled by the Valide Sultan, the mother of the reigning Sultan, who was often the most powerful woman in the empire. It was populated by hundreds of concubines, mostly captured or purchased slave girls who were trained and educated here. Their ultimate goal was to catch the Sultan's eye, bear him a son, and perhaps one day become the Valide Sultan herself. It was a world of intrigue, jealousy, and sometimes murder, a golden cage. We walk through the tiled corridors, past the apartments of the concubines, the chambers of the Sultan's favorites, and the magnificent imperial hall where the Sultan would entertain his family. The walls are covered in exquisite Iznik tiles, the ceilings are painted with intricate golden patterns. It is a place of suffocating beauty. We see the courtyard of the eunuchs, the black eunuchs who guarded the harem, themselves slaves who had risen to positions of great power and trust. We see the apartments of the young princes, the Shahzade, who were kept confined here in what was known as the cage, to prevent them from raising rebellions against their father. It was a system that ensured stability, but at a terrible psychological cost. Finally, we emerge into the fourth courtyard, a series of beautiful terraced gardens and pavilions with breathtaking views over the Bosphorus. Here, in places like the Baghdad Kiosk, a masterpiece of Ottoman art, the Sultan could escape the pressures of state and the intrigues of the harem and simply enjoy the beauty of his capital. Standing here, with the cool breeze coming off the water, looking out at the ferries crisscrossing between Europe and Asia, you can understand why this spot was chosen. This was the master's view, the center of the world. What does Topkapi tell us? It reveals the inner workings of the Ottoman mind. It shows us a conception of power that was remote, secluded, absolute. It was a system built on loyalty forged through slavery and dependence, not birthright. It was a world of immense sophistication and beauty, but also of profound loneliness and paranoia. The ghosts of Topkapi are not the ghosts of soldiers on a battlefield. They are the ghosts of whispers in a tiled corridor, of secrets kept, of ambitions thwarted, of the silent, desperate struggles for power within the gilded walls of a beautiful prison. The final day, it is always a strange, bittersweet feeling. The city has become familiar. You have your favorite cafe for morning coffee, you know the shortcut through the side street, you can navigate the tram system without looking at the map. You have started to build a routine, a small life, and now you must leave it. But there is one last pilgrimage to make, one last thread of the story to follow. We take the tram and a bus to a part of the city far from the tourist trail, to the neighborhood of Ayup. It is a deeply religious, conservative area at the far end of the Golden Horn. The atmosphere is different here, quieter, more serene. Our destination is the Ayup Sultan Mosque. It is one of the holiest sites in the Islamic world. It is built on the site where Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, the standard-bearer of the Prophet Muhammad, is said to have died during the first Arab siege of Constantinople in the 7th century. His tomb is here, and for centuries, pilgrims have come to pray at his side. The courtyard of the mosque is filled with families. Children feed the pigeons. It is a place of deep peace and community faith. From the mosque, we walk to the nearby cable car. It lifts us up a steep hillside over a vast and beautiful cemetery. The hills of Ayup are covered in the graves of centuries of Istanbul's citizens. The old Ottoman tombstones are works of art, slender marble pillars carved with turbans or fezzes to denote the rank of the man buried beneath, or with flowers for a woman. They stand at jaunty angles, a silent white army marching up the hill under the shade of dark cypress trees. At the top of the hill is the Pier Lodi Café. It is named after the French novelist who came here often in the late 19th century to write, drink coffee, and gaze at the view. And the view is, without question, one of the best in the entire city. The entire Golden Horn is laid out before you, a serene, curving waterway, its shores lined with mosques and old Ottoman buildings. In the distance, you can see the skyline of the historic peninsula, the domes of the Hagia Sophia and the Süleymaniye Mosque rising like great gray bubbles. The city looks peaceful from here, a dream city floating on the water. We order a Turkish coffee. It arrives in a small cup, thick, black, and potent. We sit in silence for a long time just looking. This is the Istanbul of the imagination, the city of painters and poets. From this vantage point, you can see the layers, you can see the geography that shaped its destiny. You can see the skyline built by the faith and ambition of emperors and sultans. And you can see the modern city, teeming with the life of 16 million people, pulsing with an energy that is both ancient and utterly new. This view is a summary, a final chapter. It is a place to reflect on everything we have seen. The city of Constantine, of Justinian, of maimed, of Suleiman. The city of riots and sieges, of trade and faith, of beauty and cruelty. It is all there, spread out before you in the hazy afternoon light. The taxi to the airport takes the long way along the old sea walls. I look out the window at the crumbling Byzantine towers, at the blue expanse of the Sea of Marmara. I think about the journey, a journey through time as much as space. You come to a city like Istanbul as a tourist, armed with a guidebook and a list of sights to see. But if you are lucky, you leave as something else. You leave as a witness. You have stood on the ground where empires rose and fell. You have walked through halls that echoed with the decisions that shaped the world. You have seen how history is not a neat story in a book, but a messy, layered, ongoing conversation. You realize that the past is not past. It is present in the stones, in the food, in the faces of the people, in the very air you breathe. As my plane lifts off, I look down at the city shrinking below. The Bosphorus is a silver slash dividing the two continents. The great mosques are tiny jewels on the historic peninsula. The ruins and the skyscrapers, the ancient walls and the modern bridges all blurring into one. History, I realize, is not what happened. It is what we carry with us when we leave. And Istanbul gives you a heavy, beautiful burden to carry. A story of worlds colliding, of faith enduring, and of a city that has died and been reborn 1,000 times, and yet somehow remains eternal.